Okay, welcome to the second video of this series. I'm standing in this video because it's too hot. I don't want to sit. And my chair is blocked with clothes and everything. So I'm standing, and that's why I'm looking upward, because there's no other place I can fix my webcam. That being said, this is the second video in the healing from pain series. I'm not sure what I called it. I actually already made a second video before, like at the same time that I made the first video. But I was watching it and then I was like, not sure if it quite makes sense. So I'm filming it again today and hopefully I can upload it today as well. But it's really hard, so if you see like sweat on my forehead, it's, oh yeah, I'm drinking tea. I know, it's kind of ironic. Anyways, okay, last video I covered the theory behind pain, physical pain and mental pain, and today, or in this video, I want to talk about the first step in the healing process plan, which only consists of 2 steps, or maybe a third, I'm not quite sure. But this is the first step, which is uncovering the reason for the problem. As I discussed in last video, there's always a reason why pain happens. So for physical pain, it is usually a physical cause. Obviously, okay, that makes sense. But like, for example, if I would burn my hand on my teacup right now, that would be, the heat would be the reason for the pain signal, right? So for mental pain, it is a little bit different because there is no real physical reason for the pain. So I think I've already covered that in the last video. Mental pain is caused by something mental. And something mental that is happening usually in our subconsciousness. If you want to solve a problem, you need to know what the problem is, right? So you have to distinguish between the symptoms and the root of the problem. The root of the problem is causing the symptoms. So if we are only fighting the symptoms, for example, I'm just gonna take like a personal example. Yeah. So for me, my psychosomatic symptoms, psycho meaning mental, somatic meaning physical. So psychosomatic pain is usually caused by a mental reason, mental problem, psycho, with somatic, so physical, like results, like the symptoms are physical but the problem is mental. So for me it was tummy ache, stomach ache. I had a lot of stomach ache. Is it stomach ache? Huh? Tummy ache. Tummy ache, bowel ache, I don't know, tummy ache in my eating disorder, which I believe to be physical, but I've been through a lot of examinations and turned out nothing was wrong with me. Like literally nothing was wrong with me physically, but it was still hurting. So then I discovered psychosomatic pain. No, okay. But so yeah, but I'm serious. There was a reason for me that I was experiencing this pain, but there was no physical reason. So I had to find out what's the mental reason. But sometimes you don't really know what the real core behind the problem is. So in my case, it was that I was afraid that I would get tummy ache when I ate certain foods, or even if I ate at all. I was afraid, kind of subconsciously, not always very consciously afraid, but I mean, I always felt afraid, but I didn't know that it was anxiety back then. So it was kind of subconscious fear of food that resulted in the pain. So let's say I was constantly thinking, oh my god, if I'm gonna eat this, I'm gonna be in pain. Oh my god, if I'm gonna eat this, I'm gonna be in pain. Oh my god, if I'm gonna eat this, I'm gonna be in pain. Constantly kind of like repeating that in my head. Now, that in itself is causing pain. Why? Because our brain, and I think I've talked about this before as well, cannot distinguish between the real reality and the perceived or believed reality. So this kind of sounds very, how to say, unbelievable maybe. Wait a minute. I mean, I can understand if you're like skeptical of this, but I want to give an example of an experiment. I'm not sure if it's a research, if it has been a research study or not, but maybe you've heard of the, I will call it experiment, that researchers or experimenters, I will just call them researchers, they said like that they had created an app with which they could produce smells through the phone, and then they went onto the street and they walked up to people and they were like, hey, we developed an app which can actually produce smells. So, and then they would tell them like, if I push this button, some kind of like lemon smell will come out of the phone. I'm not quite sure if this is completely, this is how I remember it, so don't pin me on it. And then they would like put the phone under their nose, and then people would really believe that they smelled. Like they were like, yes, it really smells like a lemon or strawberry or whatever they used as a example. How does that work? Well, the brain believed it to be true. Like they were told by authorities that it would be like that. And now in sociology, I learned that people believe authorities. Like if I tell you something, I'm not an authority. I have no degree. I mean, I have a degree, but not in this topic necessarily. I can tell you that I researched this myself, but you have no proof, right? So I may not be an authority. So you may not believe me if I just tell you like, hey, this and this, you know? But authorities like presidents or like healthcare people, like people in a certain position, we see them as having an authority. And if they tell us something, like for example, if I go to my GP and he says, oh, the problem you've talked to me about, that is this and this and this, and we can do this and this to help it, then I'll believe him. So in sociology, I learned that we do believe authorities more. So yeah, the thing is, because they believed that it was real, they kind of tricked their brain into believing that it was real. So that is also how brainwashing works. If you just keep repeating stuff to people, eventually they'll believe it. That's just kind of how our brain works. And the thing is, above the authority, the person that is even more convincible, even more that we believe even more, is ourself, is our own voice. So to say, so if I tell myself that, oh, this is going to be lemon, I'm gonna smell lemon, and sometimes we do that unconsciously, right? Then the higher the chances that my brain thinks, oh, this is the truth. How exactly that works, I don't know. I'm not a neurologist. I don't know. So how exactly it works, I don't know. But this is just an example of how the brain perceives the world, or like believes the reality that we tell it. That is maybe also why flat earthers believe that the earth is flat. Kind of like conspiracy theories. Maybe that's how it works. I'm not sure, but it could be. Now, if the belief that you have is a negative one, and then with negativity causes pain a lot. In any form of negativity can cause any form of pain. But my belief in my example was that if I would eat, I would be in pain. how that belief started is not really important. Although that might be the very core of the problem, it is no longer the cause of the problem. Because the reason that I started to believe that might have been just a coincidence. Like, it may just have been that when I started to become aware of my stomach ache, that I just somehow kind of connected it to food, and that I therefore started to think that, oh, every time I eat food, I see a correlation, even though that might not have been the case. It might just have been something else, right? But that is part of my eating disorder story, which will be covered or is covered in another video. But at this moment that I'm experiencing the psychosomatic pain, that first moment that it started is no longer the problem, because now it's just a thought. It's just a belief that grew from that. How can I say? That developed from that point. Yeah. So my belief. So it's the belief. My belief is that if I eat, I will get stomach ache or tummy ache. That is my belief. Well, that is how my brain perceives the world, because I tell my brain that that is the truth, even though it doesn't have to be the truth. But our brain cannot separate those things, okay? Now, like I said, that belief is usually unconscious or subconscious. We are not aware of it. We have to become aware of it in order to tackle it. Because let's give this as an example. I give you a sheet of paper and I've written a formula on it, like 3 + 7 equals or something like that. But I have covered it up with like a black marker or something. So I'm giving you that sheet, like, here's the problem. Please tell me how to fix it. Or like, please solve this formula. Please solve this, I don't know what it's called, the sum that is written underneath the, like, you cannot see it. How are you going to solve the problem if you don't know what the problem is? You can guess, right? You can guess that, oh, the answer is going to be 12. And I'm like, wrong, because it was like 7 + 3, so that's 10, haha. But you don't know because you didn't see it. So the thing is, you have to uncover the problem first, right? How are you going to uncover something that is unconscious? We are not aware of it. Once you start to get aware of it, you, like, finding, how can I say? You have to become aware of it in order to find the thought, right? In order to recognize the thought patterns that have grown or developed in your mind. Now, one way to do that, and I'm not saying that this is the only way to do it, but one way to do that is to use, introspection. Introspection, reflection, those two are very important. One way to reflect on yourself is using the morning pages, which I've talked about before, and I keep repeating it. And why? I'm not sponsored or anything. What? Okay. Wait a minute. Actually, I bought the book finally. So, I think I've already told you that the morning pages are a thing that is covered in this book, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And it's actually the very first thing that she says or tells you to do. So if you don't know what The Artist's Way is about, it's about finding your inner artist. So it's for artists, like people who are professional artists, but also for people who are not professionally creative, but who want to become more creative and don't really know how to get started, or like they feel like they're blocked. Like if you are experiencing an artist block or a writer block or a drawing block or whatever kind of block, then this book is gonna help with that. And the first step, the first foundation of kind of like finding that creative well within yourself again is, according to Julia Cameron, the morning pages. Now, I started doing the morning pages in my recovery, because that's when I actually started reading this book. I had heard about it before, but I just never read it. And it helped tremendously, because at first it's very hard to do. So, morning pages, very quickly, what is it? According to the book, you just have to sit down in the morning, have 3 sheets of paper, just a blank. You can have any kind of paper. You can have a notebook. You can have whatever, just something that you can write on. And the ideal is that you do like 3 sides of the paper. You write, and depending on the size of your notebook, it's gonna be different, obviously. When you start out, you just sit down, and the goal is to just write without thinking. So when you first start the morning pages, it's gonna be quite hard, because if you're not used to like freely writing, like kind of like getting into a flow, kind of getting into the flow state, right? Flow state just is like you don't have any conscious effort anymore. You're not consciously thinking about how to do something. You're just going, and it feels good. And that's also the goal with this morning pages, that you just sit down and you just write and write, just whatever comes to your mind. It doesn't matter if the sentences are full or not, if the sentence starts at A and ends in B. It doesn't matter. No one is going to read it. Even you are not going to read it anymore. So if you are writing like very ugly and you're not able to read it anymore, like me when I do that, that's not a problem. But that being said, if you're not used to it, the beginning is going to be very awkward. Like, you don't know what to write. You're just sitting there and like, I don't know what to write. Just start anything. The thing is, once you start and you kind of like slowly, without any pressure. So if nothing really comes to mind, then just don't write anything, right? Or just write what you did that day. Or just write how you feel in the moment. And then maybe something opens up and you think about something else that you want to write. And then at some point, you're just going to write until you've written all the conscious things, and you're kind of like digging, right? So writing, but digging, digging into your brain. And you've been digging so far that you've reached the subconscious level of your brain. And then you start digging into the subconscious, and you start writing in the flow state, and you're just writing everything that's in your mind. And then eventually the unconscious or subconscious things will occur as well. And also, while writing is also very reflexive. I don't know. While you're writing, you're also thinking about it. That's also why, in trying to study something and trying to learn a new subject, writing about it is very helpful for your brain. Also, for example, if you're in a course and teacher is talking, making notes is because it's very reflexive. You're seeing it, you're thinking it, you're writing it, you're seeing it, you're thinking about it, it's kind of like going back and forth. And because you're not constantly in your brain, but you're actually making it concrete on a paper, it can help you to organize your thoughts as well, instead of just looking at your thoughts and you're going like, and you're trying to make sense of it. That's very hard. So just writing them down makes it much more clear. So those are a few reasons why morning pages help you to see clearly and become aware of certain thought patterns or certain things that you've been doing in your life, certain beliefs. One of the other tasks in the beginning of this book is to write down all of your beliefs about yourself, about your work, For example, things like, I'm not good enough, I am not a real artist, my work is not pretty, I can't draw, no one likes my drawings, something like that. Because after the morning pages, the thing is, because, how can I say, the goal of the morning pages is to become aware of those thoughts, right? So that's why the morning pages is the first task, and then I think it's the next task, is writing down the negative thoughts that you now can be aware of. Writing down negative thoughts, and then the next step is to counteract those thoughts, because now that we've uncovered the negative thoughts, which is potentially the cause of your how can I say, let's just call them the false beliefs, okay? Now that you've discovered the false beliefs, for example, every time I watch TV, I'm gonna have a headache. Every time I watch, and you just keep repeating. Once we've discovered the false beliefs, we know what the problem is, right? How to fix it. I think that is my next step. So I am not gonna talk about that. But the first step in this process is to uncover the reason. And the reason can be that is something unconscious, right? Mental, pain, reason, something unconscious, something subconscious. How to discover, introspection, reflection on your own thought patterns. Now, I was talking about false beliefs, so thinking like, I get pain when, blah, blah, blah. But a lot of the times, mental pain is caused by stress. And stress, like I said in my previous video, in the first video, is that stress is actually a feeling of not being safe, right? And like I said in the first video, is pain is an alarm system. So if you're stressed and you need to get out of that situation, but you're not doing it, your body is like sending signals that, hey, this is not good, you have to go away, you have to go away. And that results in pain. So that is also some form of mental pain, because there is no real physical like reason, right? The reason is the stress. Stress is a threat, or actually stress is caused by a perceived threat. But then again, I'm using the word perceived threat, okay? So very important. I was talking about how your brain cannot distinguish between reality that is real and the perceived reality. So if I have stress from my work, for example, a few months ago, I started working on my own translation, and suddenly I was in a very dark space. I felt kind of lonely, I felt very depressed, and I couldn't work for longer than 2 hours a day, and that was already exhausting. I was super stressed. I thought that if I work less, I will be less stressed. I thought that the amount of work was the problem. So that's why I reduced my work time to like 2 hours a day. But even that, like as soon as I sat down in front of my laptop with the idea like I'm gonna work, I could feel my body was like stiffening. Like my heartbeat was like very high, and my diaphragm was like this. And I was like, I need to work. I need to do this. And and then I struggled through it. I finished my translation, which is this one. Okay. But then I got a new translation, which I started, I think, 2 months ago. And it happened again. I was like, oh, this is not what I want. I was like, this is not gonna work. Like, I need to fix it. There's something going on. So then I kind of used ChatGPT for this one, because like I said, morning pages is not the only thing that can help. It can also help to talk to someone that you trust a lot, that you think is also very reflexive person, that can help you bring clarity to your mind or give some insight in your own thoughts. that like even talking to someone can help, as long as you kind of put the thoughts out of your head, whether that is by talking to someone or talking to yourself or by writing it down or by drawing, maybe. It doesn't matter. It needs to get out. So I used ChatGPT at that moment because there was no one else that I could talk to about it. And I was like, hey, every time I sit down, I feel so freaking stressed. And I don't remember the conversation that I had, but I kind of, because I was like talking about it, I realized that it's the reason that I felt that way was because I kind of kept telling myself that that I had to do it right. Like I had to do the translation right in one go. Like, and I had to work fast. Like I felt some kind of pressure that I had to do it fast. I like to do I had to use the least amount of time as possible. Is that a sentence? That I had to like do everything correctly in the first go. Something along those lines. I wrote those false beliefs down in a notebook that's not in my room, but I identified maybe a little over 10 false beliefs that I was carrying with me every time I went to sit down in my work, which caused me to feel stressed, to feel kind of like pressured, to feel threatened, because if I didn't do it right, something was going to happen, whatever that was. It doesn't matter. I don't even know what was going to happen, but because of that thought, I got stressed, I got tensed, I got a headache, I got shoulder ache, I got belly ache, I got like no breathing. I couldn't work. So when I realized that, and I had listed my false beliefs, I could counteract them by actually writing the opposite belief. So for my belief, like I have to work fast, I wrote down, I can take all the time I want or need, something along those lines. I have enough time to do all the things that I need to do, something like that. And when I started to work, before I start to work, I just read them out loud and repeated them to myself. Like, I have all the time in the world. I can take as long as I want. It doesn't have to be perfect the first time. I can revise it afterwards again, something like that. And that actually really helped. It may sound like I'm just telling like a story to just make you convince it, but it really helped. And now I actually really like to translate again. Now I'm just going back to my room after a break, and I'm like, okay, we can do it again. Like, I feel so much lighter, because now I do not perceive it as a threat anymore. I do not perceive some threat in my work, so I don't feel stressed, so I don't have pain anymore. Does that make sense? So even if it's stress, that stress is coming from something. Even if it's, for example, your work, maybe your boss is a very angry person, then probably your belief is that if you don't do it right, your boss is going to get angry at you or something like that. Does that make sense? I don't know. I've never really worked in an office with an angry boss. So it could be. I'm not saying that every kind of stress has this kind of perceived. Obviously, there's also real reasons that how can I say? There's also real reasons why people are stressed on their work, and which cannot be solved by changing our perceived reality, by changing the reality that we think is true, by telling ourselves that it's alright, that our boss is not going to get angry. If he really is going to get angry, if he really is getting angry every day, you can tell yourself he's not getting angry, but you're not going to believe it because it actually happens. And in those situations, the best thing to do is just try to get out of the situation. right? But if you can't, then I think, yeah, I cannot give advice on that. I'm afraid I'm not certified. So, did I actually cover everything? I think so. Yeah, so the first step, once more, very summary, end note summary. First step of the plan is to discover the reason for the mental pain, which is unconscious. How to uncover your unconsciousness. I did a video on that actually. Use introspection, use reflection, get the thoughts out of your head, get them visual, or somewhere that you can see them or reflect on them. Identify your false beliefs, identify your perceived reality, and that's the first step. I already kind of covered the next step, which is change your perceived reality into a safe space. But yeah, maybe I'm doing another video on that anyway. So I hope that was clear. It's been a little bit longer than I hoped it was gonna be, but that's because I started at A, then went to B, then went to C, and now I'm back at A, I think. Well, that's how my brain works. I think that's all. Okay. Thank you for watching. If you have questions, then you can leave them in the comments if you want. Otherwise, you can look at my other videos, which I did on this topic on my channel. I don't have a lot of videos, so you'll probably find it easily. And in the next video, I'll talk about second step, unless I think of another step. And then there will be another... Okay, never mind. Okay, bye!